So in this morning's session, I'm going to just share with you what the learning outcomes are for today. So by the end of today's session, I'm hoping that during the session and throughout, we will discuss a variety of experiences where learners have not engaged, and we will identify at least one new active learning activity to incorporate into their own teaching practice. Can I just ask anyone who's just late coming in, this is a recorded session, if you could mute yourselves as soon as you enter, that would be most helpful. Thank you. Okay. So we're here to discuss active learning and to think about what it's like when people are actively learning in the classroom and why it's important. One of the main things to share is that active learning is important to our learners because it improves communication and cognitive functions. It also helps to motivate students to stretch their abilities, and it's important for achieving learning objectives. Learning helps you to become more committed as a learner, and it can shape your critical thinking and global perspectives of the wider world and the things around us. I think it's safe to say that during teaching, we all experience a number of different situations with different groups of learners where we feel that not everybody is engaging to the same level that we would like them to be. And what I want to do this morning is for us to look and identify ways in which we can help those learners to engage with us and interactively within the session. I can see, Justina, you've got your hand raised.
I just wanted to double check, Caroline, with you, if you meant to share something on the screen as you are talking.
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay, sorry.
To do that. No, I'm speaking about things, but no, I'm not sharing anything on the screen right now. Okay, thank you. So to start with, what I want us to do is discuss a variety of experiences where learners have not engaged. And I'm wanting to open up a conversation where we can share those experiences together. So the first thing that I want to say is does anybody want to share a time where they've been in the classroom and people have been busy doing their learning activities and somebody within the classroom has not engaged? Just raise a hand in the first instance to tell me whether anyone's experienced learners not engaging. Okay, Paula, I can see that you raised a hand there. Is there anything, a few more people are raising their hands now. Okay, so we do all experience this, because at first everyone's a bit scared. If I raise my hand, will I get asked to say something? I'm not going to go in and individually identify at this stage. So people have experienced that. Now, keep your hand raised if you would like to share that experience with us so that we can learn from that and then think about some ideas that you might have used that helped you to overcome that challenging situation. Gloria, I can see that you've still got your hand raised. Would you like to share?
Yeah, it might be a bit complicated. Well, okay, so in a classroom situation, small classroom situation, like one student who's always on their phone and has like listening like with a headphones in as well. So that's do you want me to share about how I dealt with it or just the context?
Yeah, no, I'd like you to share that too.
Well, this was somebody who's a not native speaker of English, and when I asked him what was happening, it was actually that he was like looking through Google Translate. I don't really know what the headphone stuff was about, but I think he was engaging. It's just that I wasn't reading it like that. So that was a recent one.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. Thank you very much for sharing that, Gloria. Yasmin, would you like to share as well?
Yeah, hi, we had a whole class some years ago. This was an external sort of contract, but the class was an evening class, all men, ground workers, so construction workers. And they just weren't, it wasn't just, I mean, we got to about the 5th session when they actually started to engage, and we had to really change up the activities, get them on their feet. And it was just that whole thing around that, bravado, being ground workers, and their chums were with them. So it's a whole team from a construction site. and they just, so we just had to get very active. We just had to get them up on their feet, doing prepositions like in a bus or, and in a line, and trying to, so it was very, very active in the end to try and get them engaged. And they did, and it was a brilliant session once we got them there. But it took a bit of time.
That's fantastic. That's really good. And it's really rewarding, actually, isn't it? When we're in a situation and we're met with a challenging task of trying to engage people and we manage to find a solution. And that's what we're about this morning. We're going to be very solution based. Can I just ask that person to mute themselves, please? Thank you very much. Okay. Kevin, I can see that you have got your hand raised. Good morning, Kevin. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
Would you like to share?
Yes, I just Kevin read on. Oh, we've got two Kevins. Which Kevin do you want?
I'm so sorry, Kevin Ashton.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning to Kevin. I've got a little story that I haven't quite got a solution to it, but I had a talk with my line manager. I have a student, and she's a wonderful student, and she comes to a lot of my classes, but she has technical difficulties because she lives in a group house situation. So she shares her broadband signal with 9 other people in the house. So often she's losing signal and not always watching the whole of the lesson because of this. So I was talking to my line manager, and he was suggesting that perhaps through support, we might be able to get her a Wi-Fi booster that is plugged into her room to boost the Wi-Fi signal just in her room, so she doesn't have to lose out on the class. And I thought that's a great idea, so I thought I'd share it with the class.
That's really wonderful. Thank you very much. And we'll go into the next, Kevin. I've just got time for one more, and then we're going to move on to the next task. Okay, so Kevin Walker, would you like to share too, please? Just unmute yourself, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Yes, I just noticed on the chat about people having a nice kip. I teach in Sidmouth, Devon, and I think probably I always used to joke the average age is about 92 in Sidmouth, but certainly amongst my students it's quite high. And I was recognizing yesterday that one of them was drifting off every so often, I sort of usually I do try to engage them or something like that, but I didn't want to draw attention to it, and I realized that actually that sometimes that can be his way of engaging is to ask a question or to get engaged in a discussion, but to be able to do that, you needed to have taken on board the content initially. So I just had to think, okay, that is okay in these situations. He's participating in a way that works for him.
Thank you, Kevin, for sharing that. We all have to overcome difficult situations sometimes with people. Sometimes people present health issues and different things that make them not able to concentrate for as long. We can introduce different ideas about, would you like to get a glass of water, anyone? Or, those types of things. I have some learners in my online class who also sometimes I feel that we do an activity for quite a while. Some people are sharing, and then some of the learners have got to a point that they're ready to move on to something different. And it's us looking at our learners. It's definitely harder in our online classes to enable us to keep them engaged and to make sure we're not just over giving information out and not actively encouraging them to do other tasks other than just listen. So that was really useful. Thank you everybody that shared, and for people who also shared into the chat, we will be saving the chat and I'll be turning that back on now. So I'm going to just pop that back in. I will just ask if we can just concentrate on the learning though. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to organise some breakout rooms, and the task is for us to share best practice examples of what works for tutors and methods that we can use to overcome these challenges that we face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to automatically assign the breakout rooms. Please do bear in mind whilst in the breakout rooms to treat each other with the utmost respect, to take turns in the conversations as we do professionally, as we would expect our learners to also do. If anybody does need help whilst in the breakout room, there is an ask for help button, which you will see once in the breakout room at the bottom of the screen. It's a question mark in a round circle, or it may be on 3 dots saying more, ask for help. That will notify me that you need me to come into your breakout room. I will be going into all the breakout rooms as soon as I open them to copy and paste the task that we've got, because I often feel we don't always remember exactly what we've been asked to do when we get in there. And I want to make sure everybody has that information to hand. Once in the breakout room, between yourselves, I would be really happy if you could decide on one member of the room that will feed back for the breakout room and to share the experiences that you've discussed. It'd be good if you could make a list of all the possible activities that you could try to encourage active learning. And I am going to ask each breakout room just to feed back 2, because we might make an extensive list in each room, and whichever room goes first is going to have the most opportunity to give us all the answers. And then everyone's going to say, I agree with that. That's what we discussed. So what I want to do is challenge you all to come up with the top 2. And I will ask you to feed that back afterwards. And each person, I would like you all to select one active learning approach that you feel, after discussing this through in your group, you may be able to approach to incorporate into your teaching. As we shared at the start of the session, that is one of the learning outcomes for this morning's session. So it'd be good for you to suggest a way for tutors to share best teaching practice together as well, if you've got a suggestion towards that. So I will copy and paste the task into each breakout room, and I will now open the breakout rooms. I can see that I've got 95 people on this call, so I'm going to open up, I'll go with 9. I'll open up 9 breakout rooms automatically. Please do be good, all of you, at somebody volunteering to do the writing and the feedback, so that we don't all go quiet when I ask the rooms to share back. Does anybody have any questions specific to the task? Excellent work, that's brilliant. Okay, I'm going to open up those rooms now.
How long are the rooms going to be open for?
We did get asked at the start of the last development day, when I ran a session, could we make the rooms a little bit, could we make it open a bit longer? So we're going to give 20 minutes to this activity.
Caroline, could we please have in the chat what we're supposed to do? Because sometimes people come into breakout rooms and like, what are we supposed to do?
I'm
Is it just
going
possible
into
to have
the
that?
breakout rooms individually to put it in, because if I put it in the chat now, you won't be able to see the chat once you're in the breakout room.
Thank you.
It's okay, no problem.
There's a newer feature that you can actually share to all the breakout rooms. You know,
Okay.
when you click on share, go down to the bottom. It's where you can share sound. There's a button, share sound. The next button is share to all breakout rooms. So it'll happen immediately.
Yeah, I'm hoping the feature on this is that the breakout rooms are going to be open. Usually when I teach in this room, it opens it up and I set the time that the breakout room will close. However, there's no option for that this morning. So I will keep an eye to the time to make sure I bring you out at 10 to, and I will share that task now. Okay, thank you very much.
Active learning, one active learning approach to incorporate into teaching. So between us all deciding the best one.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just make sure everyone's fine with coming back through. So it's saying that everybody, we're still getting a little bit of a filter actually. So as soon as I know everyone's back, brilliant, everyone's back now. That's great. So sorry that it's closed prematurely. I will definitely get in contact to see why that's happened on this account. So apologies that you were 4 minutes cut short with the discussions. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share a whiteboard on the screen. I'm not going to ask anyone to contribute to it other than myself. And I'm going to go in and say people who were in breakout room 1, breakout room 2, hopefully you will remember the number that you were in and the feedback you're giving for the session. You'll know if you're the nominated person for the breakout room, Jolie. So what I'll do is I'll just ask, in actual fact, the easiest way to do it is, could you raise a hand if you are the nominated person for your breakout room? So that's brilliant. So I'm going to start with Rob Vokes. Everybody else, if you could raise the virtual hand by clicking on reactions and raise hand, that would be brilliant. And I'll start off with Rob, and I'm going to share the screen and the whiteboard, and I'm going to add the comments on here that we've discussed during the session. Okay, so Rob, if you want to give me 2 different pieces that you want to share from your group.
Okay.
Am I okay to put Rob and your initial just to say that you were feeding back for the group?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We had a discussion about use of Canvas, and a couple of the tutors found that extremely useful to get students engaged. One tutor in particular, at the start of every session, would remind or inform students of ways of using Canvas or other means of getting engaged. So it wasn't just in the first session and then leave it to them. There was a sort of repeated encouragement to engage in different ways. The issue of using Canvas seemed different for those who had live teaching. Students in live sessions were often, or certainly in my experience and in one other person's experience, weren't particularly interested necessarily in following up between sessions. So, some were, but on the whole, it wasn't such a fluid process as when people were on Zoom. One tip in terms of keeping engagement was limit the length of inputs to 10 minutes on any particular activity. That doesn't mean to say you can't have one activity which goes on a long time, but you need to break it up into digestible bits and maybe do things. If you're doing a long PowerPoint, then stop every 10 minutes, have a discussion, have handouts, make them go into small groups, etc. Then go back to it. So limiting the length of time.
That's fantastic. Can I just ask something, Rob? You know, when you said before, I actually wrote down using cameras because I didn't hear you properly. I do apologise. You did say using Canvas. That's correct, isn't it?
It was using Canvas, not
Thank
Canvas.
you. Thank you so much. That's great.
The two other issues was just one tutor found isolation quite a problem for her in terms of doing her work, and there was another suggestion about it would be great if there were easier ways of tutors who had common interests to communicate with each other. I know there are some means of doing that, but it was an issue about how easy it was to do. That's it.
Easier ways to communicate, best teaching practice.
Yes, between tutors with common interests or common subjects.
Okay, that's brilliant from that group. That's brilliant. Okay. So thank you for sharing that. I'm just making note form into it. I will ask people who've taken notes if it's possible for you to either take a picture of the note and send it to my email. I'll share my email in the chat, or to email me the notes or just put it in an email. That would be fantastic. So we've got the full entirety of what was discussed in each group. Thank you to Rob. It's always difficult to go first. We'll go into Mike now. Coming up as Mike on the screen. Sorry.
I know, that's because I've joined through Mike's link. Apologies, my name's
No
Susan.
worries.
So
your name is what, sorry?
Susan.
Okay, thank you.
In our group, 2 that I think are worth noting. One was about the use of icebreakers, about how important they can be literally to break the ice and get learners to participate, to be active. And one colleague talked about using selective different icebreakers at the start of each session as a way to raise energy and build confidence. And we also talked about those icebreakers where people are paired and introduce themselves to another person and then introduce that person to the group, recognizing that sometimes it's easier to talk about somebody else than about yourself.
Yeah, that's
and
lovely.
Then another interesting example of sort of participation. First of all, a colleague highlighted how important it was to keep PowerPoint brief and to use them only when that's kind of the only alternative, to use them with images. And this colleague also talked about using something called Word Wall, which generated games that learners could sort of play in inverted commas on their phone, I think, as part of a way of being active in the session. And we did have others, but I'll send that in the notes.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. That's excellent from that group too. I'll ask you to unraise your hand. Thank you. Can I go into David next?
Yeah, I'm group 8. I mean, two things, if I may. The first is someone who teaches local history finds it's really helpful and important to have a very wide range of resources, because a wide range of resources enables people with different learning styles to get involved and to contribute and to discuss the resources that they're looking at. I thought that was a really good point. Someone who teaches gardening asks each person at the beginning of the course to say a few words about their own garden and about the area which they garden in, because obviously, you know, different areas affect the way you can garden. She said you don't garden the same in Cornwall as you do in Aberdeen. And that was picking up what people's own interests and enthusiasms are, and that seemed to work well. The third one, which I use myself, is that I ask, because I teach culture and art and history, I ask individuals to introduce their favourite painting or piece of sculpture, and if they come prepared to do that, then most people are willing. You know, they're quite enthusiastic about a favourite painting or piece of sculpture.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and it is great for us to be able to relate the learning to what's interesting for that individual, because that helps to engage them more. So wonderful ideas from that group too. Thank you, David, for sharing. If you don't raise your hand, I'll go into Damien next. Hi, Damien.
Okay, hiya. So one suggestion that came from our group was to do something called a tag activity. That's T-A-G. Okay, so capital T-A-G. And this would be done on using Post-it notes or sticky notes. And it is to get the learners to tell me one thing about the work from the session, ask questions about the activity, and give suggestions about the activity. Okay, and I guess this could be done perhaps at the beginning of the session as a recap. It could be done during the session possibly, or even at the end of the session as a kind of plenary kind of activity.
Is this online or face-to-face, Damien?
So this would be, so I think this is on face-to-face, but in theory, there's no reason why it couldn't be done online, because you can do sort of Post-it notes, a bit like we're doing here. You could get people to put things on a whiteboard, so it could be done online as well.
They're nice ideas too, Damien. Thank you. That's great. I'm going to push through because I'm conscious of the other rooms too, but thank you. I'll look forward to seeing more comprehensive notes from the groups too. Thank you so much. And Rebecca, if you would share next, please.
Yes, we had, well, the difficulty was that in a film studies course, there was a student who joins in the discussions, but just won't do the quiz. And the tutor wants to have some kind of sort of evidence to say, you know, that people are learning. And the suggestion was, well, maybe when they're watching the film clips, give them kind of like a tick list or note-taking questions so that they focus on what you know, what they want to do, so that when they take the quiz, they're not terrified. So that was one suggestion, I think. And then the other suggestion was we're talking about people with mental health problems or emotional problems, people who get bored very quickly and switch off. So the suggestion was to change the activities fairly rapidly, maybe more rapidly than in, you know, a different type of class. Give them a break, get them to work in pairs. One of the members of our team was sort of in her just talking about a query about the students who are very young, constantly on social media, and a suggestion might be that you look at the social dilemma online, which has class resources on how social media rots your brain. Get them to concentrate in the class. That's it.
That's quite an interesting one. I'm not going to add it to the box. I want to get on the box just 2 points from each one. So that's good things there. But I'll look forward to receiving those notes through as well. I will share my email address into the chat so we can get that up there. I'll go to Jo next. Thank you, Rebecca, for sharing that.
Yes, morning all. Yeah, I think from my group, actually, one of the really important things is know your students, because there is no one size fits all in terms of this. But we had one of the lovely groups suggested, when you have we have a range of students, some who are happy to engage, discuss, talk, some who would like to just sit in the corner and disappear into the background. So one suggestion, depending on the course you're teaching, obviously, was to have small breakout rooms where that reticent person may feel a bit less exposed than speaking to an entire group. I think that's quite a nice idea, because it can be overwhelming if you're not used to it. Now, I think, what else have I got here? Yes, and another thing is, don't assume anything about your students, because sometimes they may not appear to be engaged to the tutor, but when you ask them about something, you find, oh, actually they are engaged. So I would say from my group, they were the two most important things. Possibly
Okay,
three.
that's great, fantastic, thank you. And again, I look forward to sharing the notes. That's excellent. And
I've
I'll go
written them
into
out properly. Yeah.
Oh no, don't worry. If you want, just take a picture of them and send it to me as just a photograph, it'd be fine. Or if you want to just put into an email, whichever, that's fine. Okay, thank you so much. And I'm going to go into Paul now.
Oh, hello. Thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome.
So from the group, everybody's pretty much engaged. And I talked about web chat, and use of that in Zoom is really useful because it kind of encourages communication with students, and also it's great for evidence.
Using what? Sorry, using chat in the Zoom
web
feature.
Chat in Zoom. Oh, and with regards to other feedback, we had we need to make sure everybody's included. So sometimes it might mean like we talked about icebreakers earlier, so like moving people around. So if you're in a class situation anyway, face to face, for example, you might find students sit in the same place next to the same time. And one of our teachers was suggesting you move them around, and that encourages a better communication. It's a good icebreaker as well.
That's lovely. That's really great, Paul. Thank you very much for sharing that. Well done to that group. And we'll go into Caroline next.
Yeah, hi. So we have identified two main challenges, concentration and confidence. And so when it came to concentration, it came out that moving is really important. So get the students moving, either standing up, moving around, or doing things like physically doing things like sketching, writing down on pieces of papers, or on a flipboard, writing in the chat. So really try and being physically active while learning to sort of to fight boredom and falling asleep. And the second thing was about confidence. And here the interesting thing was encouraging activities in small groups, I think is one of the things we spoke about. To use breakout rooms, for example, if it's on Zoom, so that learners can become more comfortable with one another, and therefore be more active in the following weeks.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much for that. That's great. And I believe finally the last hand raised is Paula. So it's last but not least. Okay. And if you'd like to share too.
Okay. So yeah, a lot of the things that we talked about were already mentioned, but we started the discussion talking about how we need to understand that learners engage in different ways. So we have to be understanding of that and be able to give them what they need to be present in the way that they feel comfortable in each class. But some ideas that were mentioned was, first one, be very clear and model the tasks so the learners know what they are expected to do. And also maybe have them give or provide feedback in each session. Could be formal feedback, or it could be a poll on Zoom, but give them the chance to stop and think about what they have taken from that session. Also find inspiration in game shows. Why not? To adapt some subjects and topics that you might be covering that might be too complex to just give a lecture. Try to be creative about your approach. And let me see what else. I think that what were the main ones. Yeah.
That's excellent. That's really good. We've shared some really interesting ideas and thoughts there. It's quite interesting when Paula said that last thing about game shows. I don't know if anyone attended my other session in the last development day, where I showed a spin the wheel approach for people to take part. I know my learners really enjoy using that when I'm doing online classes, and I spin the wheel and select the names at random, and then nobody feels as if I'm picking on them. They're actually selected through that process. So that is a really useful one. I do want to just take the opportunity quickly to make sure that I've put into the chat area my email address for people who may want to send the feedback from the rooms. So I'll just share my email address in there. Okay, so what I'm wanting you to do now is I want you to have a think about what is the one thing that you feel you may incorporate into your teaching practice that you might have heard in today's session and not done already, or you know, you might have discussed doing it before but not yet put it into practice, or you might have considered it yourself in the past. So I want you to just have a little think about what that area is, because it's useful for you to take that away. And what I'm going to do now is I'm wanting us to have a think about what our next steps are. So the recording of the session today will be available in the Tutor Training Hub. If you want to revisit what we've discussed, you're welcome to do that. There is a quiz in there, but the quiz is specifically for people that have been unable to attend today. However, I have put in the Canvas, the learning materials that I prepared for the session, and I would like to just take a moment to go through that with you and to show you whereabouts that sits within the Tutor Training Hub. So I'm just going to share my screen onto Canvas. So in the Tutor Training Hub, when you click onto modules, as you scroll down, there's lots of useful information in here for people who are not actively using the Tutor Training Hub because they're not sure of what's in there. There's loads of information about how we can measure progress, learning outcomes for non-accredited courses, setting goals and smart learning objectives. So do take time to sometimes visit that area, because sometimes some of the things that we're wanting to include in our sessions, there is work advice and guidance for that. I'm just scrolling down to the section that I've added on here because there's a lot of information on here. So I'm just scrolling through. Yeah, so we've got the development days that have taken place. Okay, sorry. So the information on the non-accredited quiz for the people that haven't attended, if you've got any friends who haven't attended, teaching colleagues, that's the quiz for that. But because you've attended the session as such, you don't need to do anything with that. And I'm just scrolling back up because I was asked to place the information that I've prepared in between two sections. Sorry about this, just bear with me. I wish there was a quick way to locate when I'm doing this instead of scrolling up and down.
I was going to say, Caroline, this looks like a nightmare for us to then find it. There's no disrespect to you. I know
this is mine. I've been told to place it here, so mine is here. So this is the add date for me for the active learning and engagement. I've put on here the learning outcomes that were for the session. So we'll just revisit those again. So we've discussed a variety of experiences where learners have not engaged, and hopefully you've all identified one new active learning activity to incorporate into your own teaching practice. I've just shared here about what active learning is, and I've embedded in a link that you can visit that talks about that concept. And also difficulties of ensuring that all learners are engaged. So some of the difficulties that we face, that people might choose to listen but not contribute and things like that. So I've added some things on there for you to look at if you want to. As well as that, I've added a video about what is active learning. I found that video quite useful actually, just to give me an information as to what that is and what it looks like in the classroom. And in addition to that, some useful tips for collecting class-based evidence of active learning. So we can save whiteboards created in classes that are online. We can photograph flip charts used in class, make notes of questions that were asked in class and names of learners that answered questions, taking photos of work that's produced, encouraging learners to upload their work independently to Canvas where possible. In discussions, I know some learners do have challenges with the use of Canvas, so I'm just putting that in there if that's a possibility. I can see Justina's got a hand raised. Justina?
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to clarify if this section is going to be available through a link on your page
In the
into the
Tutor
training
Training Hub.
section. Yes. So if I can, so there is a very easy shortcut to get to the Tutor Training Hub section with add the resources from the landing page of Tutor Training Hub. If you don't mind, I could perhaps share my screen and just show very quickly where to find it.
Justina, would it be okay if you just did that in a minute, if that would be okay, just so
Yeah,
that I can
that's
just
fine.
finish off what I've got planned? Is that all right?
Absolutely,
Thank you
yeah.
so much. I'm just trying to run to my time, that's all. Thank you. So one thing that some tutors are not aware of is where the evidence is, as in they're not sure how to complete the where the evidence page. On each course within Canvas, there is a section where you're asked to upload RAPA evidence on non-accredited courses. When you click on modules, there's a RAPA module, and you will see that there is a page that says where the evidence is for each learning outcome. I've developed some process notes to show tutors whereabouts that is. So that's the module, where the evidence is for each learning outcome. And I've done a very brief step-by-step guide as to how you can edit that so that you can actually fill in where the evidence is for the course. So for example, if you've got 5 learning outcomes, you might do a quiz to answer the questions of confidence or competence with particular areas. You could simply put your learning outcomes into that page and put quiz week 3. And then somebody coming into the WEA looking at that course, or when people are wanting to see in an observation, where is the learning evidence? Not only have you collected it through engaging learners with active learning, but you've documented the space in which somebody coming in can find the evidence to prove that your learners have achieved each of those specified learning outcomes. I'm now going to switch over to Justina to quickly show us the whereabouts that is on there. Did you want to do that, Justina, now? Thank you. I can see that we've got a question. I'll just take a question afterwards, if that's okay, Katerina.
So if you go to your dashboard and click on the icon with the laptop, which is our icon of the Tutor Training Hub, on the landing page, you've got different buttons leading you to different sections of Tutor Training Hub. If you scroll down here, there is Development Events button. And from this point, you can access all resources from the workshops and association development days that have been delivered so far. Everything from today will be saved in this space. So when it is all ready within the next 2 to 3 weeks, because of the Easter break, it will all work for you. When you click on it, you will see the resources. Please bear with us. We will need to wait for the videos to be edited and saved in there. We will need to save all the resources in there. So it will take a little bit of time, but it will be all there.
Thank you very much.
A link for that section that Caroline very kindly developed, which is separate, perhaps could be accessible through a link from a page in that section. As for each session on the app days, we've got 1 page and 1 quiz And that's the structure that we
Thank you, Justina. I'm really conscious of time because this session finishes at 10:15 and it's not leaving much time for anyone who's got any questions because the feedback's been really fantastic throughout. So I just want to open the floor now for any questions that people may have or anything that they want to share specific to the learning so that we can leave on time because we do all have a break. I've been told to make sure that I let everybody know that we are having the lunch break. So we are breaking off from the development day for the next 45 minutes, I believe, once this finishes. So can I just,
Caroline, could you just check my direct message to you? You were in the middle of speaking. I left you a message.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, just bear with me. Lots of people have put other direct messages in at the same time. You can't copy and paste it down, can you, for me? Just bear with me a second.
I was just going to ask, because we talked about WordWall and some of our group were quite interested in it. I'm just asking my permission. Can I share a link to a WordWall activity that, well, many people can use, not just ESOL groups?
I don't see that that's a problem to share that, to explore the use of that. But if there's any red tape around that, Justina can answer that now. You're happy to share? Yeah, that seems fine. I think Justina's nodding. Okay, that's excellent. Thank you for that. Sorry that I've missed that in the chat. I do apologise. Thank you. And Richard, you've got your hand raised.
It helps if you unmute yourself, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
It's only because somebody else has mentioned it, and I don't know what other people have found, but the Tutor Training Hub, the user permissions haven't been set up correctly. It just comes up on some of the sections and just says some form of access denied, you don't have access. So I thought it was worth mentioning there is an issue with the permissions because
can I just ask, is that when you click on the 31st of March development day, or is that when you actually go into the Training Hub? I think it's really useful if anybody who's experienced that problem could send an email through to Justina identifying what that problem is and which section was the issue so that we can look to get that resolved. So if anyone's experienced
I've raised it with my line manager many times because every time there's a new section on there, it's exactly the same. It's just the permissions on our users haven't been set up to allow access to any of that. So it just is a global setting that needs changing. That's all it is. But it has been raised. It has been raised a number of times that the Tutor Hub is just not accessible.
Okay, well, the chat's going to be saved and forwarded onto the curriculum and performance team, so that will help to, get the quality going with that. Okay.
Thought it was worth mentioning in SITS. We'd spoken about it.
Thank you, Richard, so much. I am conscious it is 12:15. I'm going to take questions from people that want to, but anyone that wants to exit at this point to go for the lunch, please feel free to do so. Running on time is something that's very important to me. Yes, I'll take the question, Rob. Anyone who needs to go, thank you so much for joining me this morning and for your help and support with the activities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rob, can I take your question?
Caroline, I just wanted to say I really welcome that guide you had to where to lodge the evidence. Having sweated blood to gather the evidence, I want to make sure it's in the right place. So if you can make sure that the link or the guidance to get there, that'd be really helpful.
I'm going to ask if Justina can change the module that I've put in a certain area onto the actual days, so my resources are underneath my session, because I can just click and drag them down and reorder them. So me and Justina will have a chat about the best place for that resource to be able to be added, and I'm happy to make sure you've got access to that. But I will also make a note of your name, and I will find you and I will send you that as a document attachment so that you've got that, Rob. Okay, but everybody else, just know if you do need that, I've shared my email address, email me and I will send you the document because it is useful and lots of people don't know it's there. Thank you, Rob. I saw another hand. It was somebody else's hand. I can see Marco's hand. Yes, Marco.
Oh, hi, Caroline.
Hi.
Just a quick question, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's a silly question or not, but
no questions silly. Please fire away. The questions that are silly are the ones that are not asked.
No, but well, let's see what happens after I've asked the question. It's just because in one of my in one session of a course that I was running, I noticed that one of the students took a picture with their phone of the screen that I was sharing with the other students. And that sort of then led me to think a little bit about whether sort of students can, well, either, I mean, I'm maybe just extrapolating from this example, but if they wanted to record with their own device, like let's say a phone, the session.
Okay, I'm going to interject, Marco, because I know where you're going with this one. Basically, we would not want anyone recording any sessions, and if we knew somebody was sat videoing with their phone up to the screen and it was clearly obvious, that would be a safeguarding concern that we would need to raise, and we would need to sort that through.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, in theory, although they can't record during Zoom and they're not allowed, they can't turn the feature on, we will never know whether anybody has done a recording of a session in an online class. However, we have to do the best we can to endeavour to ensure that if we have any idea that this is happening, we act upon it, we contact our appropriate safeguarding officer, and we ensure that we, you know, do the best we can to make sure that person's aware that this is not okay. Does that answer your question, Marco?
Yeah, because I did say in the next session, you know, just that this is sort of private session and not to just take any evidence, I mean, recordings or any, but yeah, so the doubt was there because, I mean, also because we can't police it, can we? Like
no, we can't, and we've got to think that, you know, there's going to be risks with every aspect of learning that we do online, and it's about us managing those risks and taking the necessary precautions when issues arise. And it sounds like you covered that well. I would also have recommended you to have contacted your course organizer stroke line manager to have informed them that that was a concern and what you'd done, and they would then, you know, tell you if there was any other paperwork you needed to fill in regarding that. Thank you, Marco, for sharing. Remember, everyone, if we do want a break, do feel free to leave, but you're very welcome to stay. I'll continue. Yes, Katrina, is it Katrina? Sorry.
Yeah,
Katrina. Thank you, Katrina.
Speaking about Marco's situation, is it a problem, that person videoing, because there may be other people's faces on the screen?
It is a problem videoing because it's a breach of their GDPR. They're not saying, please video me. They've been told that they're in a safe space where students can't record. So if they look to be using a device to record, it is a concern, and it's definitely something that we need to flag.
So what about if you ask your students to minimize their videos? I think I have to ask my students to minimize their videos because most of them are down the right-hand side of the screen, not at the top.
As in, would we allow them to do that if we asked them to minimize the videos? No, we still wouldn't be allowing them to video actively within the session. Everybody has to fill in a prior consent form to videos and photographs, and it's very important we adhere to those rules. So yeah,
I think you just have to say to your learners, what I do is anything I use in class, even if I just bring up an empty word wall, an empty Word document and start filling it up with their tutor generated sentences, I'll put on Canvas afterwards.
Yeah.
So everybody gets to see it all again. And
yeah, exactly. You just say that I've shared the resources to Canvas and the publish, so please don't feel the need to take any pictures or videos of what I'm doing because it's already there. You can also start off by saying, I'm sharing on the screen what's already in Canvas, so you don't need to start it off with that. Would be a great point. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Katrina. Anyone else got any questions before we close for our lunch? Fantastic.
Hi. So what about with pre-entry ESOL where they can't access Canvas? And I know majority of them, because it's a ladies only class and they have their camera switched off and they're taking screenshots of various pages. Is that acceptable then?
I think this is something that you need to discuss with your course organizer and line manager and come to an agreement of what you're doing in that type of class with those pre-entry learners, because that's out of my remit of knowing how we deal with that type of learner group, and I wouldn't want to misguide you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fine.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else got any other questions before we close? Yes, Katrina?
Sorry, can I just reply to, I think it's Hina. What I've done is emailed everyone the resources, but BCC'd, so nobody gets to see anybody else's emails. But I've emailed the resources to them because they can't.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, some of my learners are, you know, they can't even email.
Yeah, I know.
know, the English standard and, you know, digital, the skills are very low, that they, you know, having trouble to email or even access Canvas. Even when I, you know, put them into breakout rooms, they end up chatting in their own language. Use the breakout room as a chat room rather than an activity. So I've stopped using breakout room for that purpose as well. But if anybody, you know, else has any suggestions, more than welcome to take on board.
Excellent, that's great. So I just want to thank you all for joining me this morning. It's been a real pleasure. I look forward to seeing you again at another development day. I do enjoy getting the opportunity to do these days. I will share the documents into the Canvas and ensure that that is shared. Everybody's taken my email address. If anyone does want a copy of the document of where the evidence is, just drop me an email. I'll ping it back to you. Okay, thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Lovely to see you all. Have a lovely Easter break. See you later.